Tips and tricks to flip your roster in your dynasty rebuild. Let's talk about it.
Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark, and we're your hosts, Calvin Timms, Dale Terry, and we're back with another episode, kind of building off of last week, and I'm excited. We're another week in, and we're getting closer and closer. This is the last week before your fantasy playoffs. Most people out there, unless you're a psychopath who has week 13 playoffs,
Right.
But no, we're getting 1 week closer. This is finally the playoff week, and I'm excited. You know, a couple of leagues didn't go so well. A couple of leagues we're squeaking through, maybe, hopefully. A couple of leagues I'm going for a bye. So, you know, it's all over the map, but this is the best time of year. And as we're wrapping up our leagues, we're going to be getting more and more into the dynasty content because some of you guys are not making playoffs, and that this is what this video is for the people that didn't make playoffs, kind of building off of last week's the Dynasty Untouchables episode that we did. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out on YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple, anywhere that podcasts are really found at Dynasty After Dark. And you can find us on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, at Dale, at Dynasty_Dale, and at FF After Dark on the Twitter,
Somewhere.
Twitter X,
Somewhere.
Twox, whatever.
Wherever you can find us.
Right. So that's it. How we doing today, Dale?
Hey, I'm doing pretty great. Trying not to watch this hellacious football game we have in store tonight, on Thursday night with the Pats and Steelers, but
Patriots are going to win, and we're going to screw ourselves out of either Drake May or Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr., and I'm going to be so happy.
And I am here for it. As a Dolphins fan, I love it. I love the demise of the Patriots. It's one of my favorite things so far this year.
Did we just... I could go on a whole rant. Maybe we'll do a fixing your franchise. I want to actually do a couple more of those this year, and let us know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. If you want to see a couple of fix your franchises, real football talk, our thoughts on fixing the Panthers or the Raiders. We did the Raiders last year, the Titans, some of these other teams before free agency. We can make some predictions, things like that, what we would do in free agency or the draft. Let us know if that's something that would interest you guys as some off-season content. It doesn't really play into Dynasty too much, but, sometimes we want to have a little bit of a break and talk about some fun stuff. But, we also want to talk about stuff that interests you. So if that interests you, comment down below. And if not, make sure you guys leave some podcast ideas that you do want to hear about. And we'd be happy to get to some of those here in the off-season. But, yeah, that said, let's jump into some of our tips and tricks, and we're going to go with the first one. Dale, drop your first one.
All right, so so my first one is actually it's a pretty tricky trick. I'll be honest. And it's trying to sell your aging stars a year before they fall off the cliff.
Yes.
And
this is going to sound so obvious, right? Like, oh yeah, yes. Sell your old guys, but you're trying to sell them before the peak, right? Or at the peak, right? Before the fall off happens,
Yes, before the dip, basically.
Yep.
Yes. And that can be really hard because we've seen, well, like for instance, like for the, it's for the running back cliff, like is like 27, 28. And then we have, Derrick Henry, who is doing his thing. I think he's 29 now. It's same with McCaffrey, who's a little older, with these guys that are still doing it. And you might have sold them, 2-3 years ago, even thinking that they were going to fall off, and then they never did. So you're kind of a little torn on selling some of these guys, but there is evidence of these guys, and there's less and less of these outliers that we have, with the CMCs of the world, and the Mike Evans of the world that are doing this year in and year out.
Right.
Like they're going to fall off eventually. And, and I think it is important to be able to try to sell these guys maybe a year or two when they're at their peak, and you're able to get as much value as you can, especially if you're rebuilding. It's to kind of get them off your roster and to accumulate as many picks or younger players.
Right. And like Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans, these are perfect examples, right? Stephon Diggs, these type of guys who, Cooper Kupp is starting to finally see a little bit of that dip, and it doesn't help that he's been kind of banged up and everything this year. But Mike Evans, for example, I mean, the guy just put up another 1,000-yard season, and there's no signs of him slowing down whatsoever. And I get it. He's older, right? Keenan Allen, same thing. But, you know, Keenan Allen and Mike Evans, you're not getting a first for either one of those guys right now. And
No.
it's all because of age, right? And that's where those guys are going to vastly outproduce their trade value. But, you had to really capitalize on them a year ago, right? Where, or maybe even 2 years ago for
Years
a couple
ago,
of these
yeah.
guys. And it's funny, I'm looking at a trade calculator right now for reference. Mike Evans has gone almost like straight up for the last couple of months because of how
Mhm.
good he's been. And,
Right.
it's just like these guys do still have value, but you want to not hit the dip. You don't want to buy in the spikes, right? You don't want to be buying Mike Evans. Well, if you want to be winning titles, I guess you can go and buy Mike Evans,
Yeah.
but his value's essentially sunk. So you want to sell these guys like Stephon Diggs before the end, Travis Kelce, some of these older players. Debo Samuel's another one that I kind of would be trying to move on from personally. But, no, I like that a lot. That's a very good piece of advice there. My first one, and this is gonna, again, we're gonna work our way up here. We're gonna start with the obvious, basic
Yep.
ones, but we're gonna get to some more tricky tricks or some more in-depth tricks here. But the first one is gonna be after the season. If you made playoffs, or if you're out of the playoffs right now and you're kind of, thinking about next year, what do I need to be doing? Getting a head start on your roster. The biggest thing to do is evaluate your team, and also to get a third party evaluation on your team, right? Everybody thinks you go back to August or July, right? Oh, this roster is the best. How is this
Mhm.
roster going to lose? How is this roster not going to be number one overall? And then week 7 rolls around, you're 1-6 or 0-7.
Yep.
You're like, man, what happened here? Was it just injury, bad luck, or what? We're not always the most reliable sources of feedback on our teams, right? But the first step is evaluating your own team. Try to find the honest weaknesses of your team. And that's hard because the
It is.
hopium and the oh, this guy's got potential, but being realistic, and that's what's helped me so much this last year, is being realistic with some of those bottom dwelling roster cloggers, essentially, like the Alec Pierces of the world. If I can trade him with
Yeah.
in a package for anything, I'm going to do it. And it's mostly because he's shown some flashes here and there, and that's great. He's never going to be a consistent, like, top tier guy, or the chances of that are so small. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, but you've seen the potential. Yeah, but we've seen a lot of not potential too. We've seen a lot of bad with a little bit of good, and that good, we're all addicted to the little bits of good, right?
Yep.
And that hopium.
We are. Yes. Yes.
So make
Yeah.
sure you're evaluating, and then having someone else. It does not hurt to reach out to us, for example, or
Mhm.
I'll have Dale. There's many times in the summer months where I'll say, Dale, this team, what do you think about this team? And we think alike on a lot of players, but we also think
Yeah.
differently on a lot too. So it's nice to bounce it off of other people, and that can be us. It can be your other favorite dynasty analyst out there, but just getting a third party perspective after you've kind of self evaluated is very
Yep.
big as well.
Well, and with that, don't ever ask your league mates
Oh
because
yeah.
they will lie to you. But
Oh, your roster's
that's
great,
an
man.
obvious thing, but still, but that's beside the point. But yes, I do agree. Like it's always good to get an outside perspective because we do have all these biases, and
Hmm.
and we do think our team is the greatest team ever, and then it's utter garbage, like at this time of year, and you're like, what the heck happened?
Right.
And trying to cut the dead weight is important as well.
Yeah, and one other thing too, don't buy into the off season narratives. They get so bad. Like, it's just
It's
crazy how
really
some of
hard
these
not
people
to.
swing.
It's really hard not to because like I know Calvin was really on Juju this year,
Dude, he can't
as
stay healthy. Well, to be fair to me, the entire Patriots offense is just
is bad. Yeah,
garbage. Like, it's
it is. It
complete
is.
garbage.
It is, but I mean that does go to show, like what an off-season narrative can
Oh yeah, for
really
sure.
bring you a lot of hope and bring you a lot of optimism to a team,
Right.
and then they play like nothing. So
Right. I was in
yeah,
on Juju, but I wasn't in on him for like a first or anything. Let's put it in
right,
context, man.
right. Oh,
But
I know. Right.
no, but for example, like Tony Pollard is a good one that I've seen a lot of people were so high on him, or T
Yeah,
Higgins, and it's just these guys have not lived up to the hype, right? And like even Quentin Johnson, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I loved Quentin Johnson. People were down on him, and I kind of went against that with my own off-season narrative. And to be fair to everyone else, they were more right so far. Now, I do think people are taking it too far and
or
writing
yeah,
him off completely, but I liked Quentin Johnson more than JSN in some cases, and you know, it's ironically kind of played out so far, but JSN's getting much more heavily involved and he's looking a lot better on the field and everything like that. So, you know, that's another offseason narrative. Again, it's just try not to buy into those so much. But yeah, what's your second tip
all
here?
right. So my next one is to not draft based on need, but based on talent.
Yeah. That's
So
one that's hard.
it's very hard because we see these holes in our roster. I feel I'm always a running back or two short. I always feel like that, and I think most teams probably feel that way. So, I'll give a good example. Like Calvin and I were in this league where it was like early mid second round, in the rookie draft. Like Calvin went Michael Carter, I went Trey Sermon. It's a get our running backs, and then the next pick was Jalen Waddle,
Right.
and
Right.
yes, we were seeing the situation in the running back rooms of what could be good, and what our roster needed, but we probably should have picked the talent and, we could have been in a
First
little bit
round
better
pick,
shape.
wide
Yes.
receiver. And yeah, it
Yes.
was,
Yes, and just having better players and not just dead weight on your roster and in players you may not ever use.
right. And that's one thing too. Like, that was an early dynasty mistake for us. That was a couple years ago now. And that was, I think, the second year of that league or something like that. But it's just, yeah, it's easy to, when you're more inexperienced, to make mistakes like that, right? And
Absolutely.
that's where you do it one time, you're like, oh, I'm not doing this again.
Yep. Yep.
You got to kind
Yep.
of just learn firsthand. But yeah, I loved Michael Carter, but you're right, Jalen Waddle was definitely the superior talent in that one.
Yes, he was.
But yeah, there's a lot of examples like that. Even like Amon-Ra St. Brown, there's every year it seems like. And just for an example of this, there's a league where I am in rebuild in it, and I kind of prepared for that this whole year. I was not trying to be competitive all year. My roster is just a couple pieces away, and I wanted to solidify my best chance at a top pick, right? I'm going to have the number 3 or number 4 overall pick. The 1 and 2, we're doing it by max points for, I recommend that out there if you're a commissioner, but you know, depending on this week, the final week, it'll determine if I'm 3 or 4. If I'm 3, like I'm just going to hypothesize this, right? If I'm 3, let's say that Marvin Harrison Jr. and Caleb Williams are gone. That leaves me the option of Brock Bowers in a 2-point tight end premium, or like a Drake May, for example, or Malik Neighbors, or one of these other rookies that you like right now. Well, I really need a quarterback. And if I'm 4, right, am I going to reach on like a Michael Penix? If I am 4, I'm assuming Drake May is gone at 3, right?
Mhm.
So if I'm 4, would I have to reach on a guy at quarterback who I don't love necessarily as much, or do I just take Brock Bowers in a 2-point tight end premium because it's the talent like you talk about, and just,
Yep.
I know that this guy is going to be good. I don't know that Michael Penix or Bo Nix or whichever quarterback ends up
Right.
being number 3 here, is he going to be as good, even though my roster really needs a quarterback too? I've got CJ Stroud, but I really need that next guy. I'll just take
Mhm.
a stab on Brock Bowers or Marvin Harrison Jr., whoever it is that falls to me at 3 or 4 over one of those quarterbacks, because yeah, it's talent over need, right?
Yep.
So,
100%.
all right, my number 2 tip here, and this one is where it gets a little bit more in depth. And this is a big one that I feel like is easy, but nobody does. And or very rarely, right? It's very easy to get lost in the shuffle in the off season. And the biggest thing because there's that downtime, right? Between February and the draft, which is most people draft in May or June, sometime early summer. There's a couple of months, 3 months, where you can get a lot of good trades where it's after free agency, but it's kind of before the draft and people are changing how they feel and everything's changing daily, it almost feels like. But understanding the upcoming draft class, what's strong and what's weak, that's a big tip for you guys out there in evaluating your roster and the moves to make and the players to target in your trades before the draft. And what do I mean by that? So 2024, it's already looking like it's going to be a weak running back class. Now, I don't think it's as weak as people are kind of saying it is, but that's an argument for another day. But if everyone is making the argument, the consensus narrative that's going to come out is it's a weak running back class. So the quarterbacks, the receivers, and even Brock Bowers is going to go very high in this draft if you're in a super flex league, or if you're in a one quarterback, all the wide receivers are going to be gone, maybe even Caleb Williams, a couple of the other quarterbacks and everybody. So it's going to push the running backs way, way down. So one, if you really need running backs on your team, it's not a good time to go and target the rookie draft class, right? If you're going to target the rookie draft class, go target second round picks instead of first round picks. Or if you're going to make a trade with somebody, go try and trade for running backs from a team that doesn't really need, that are deep at running back or are looking to move some of these guys, because you know that you're not going to get a ton of help in the rookie draft, right? So understanding some of that. And we've seen that where, just a couple years ago, Kenny Pickett was the number one quarterback in that. It was a really weak quarterback class. That was not the draft that you wanted to invest in Kenny Pickett with a top 5 pick, right? Or even a first round pick in general, but that's what it is. Right. Yeah. So understanding that and knowing what is strong, what's considered weak, if it's a good tight end class, if it's a good quarterback class, and where you can kind of maybe move guys. Maybe you're kind of thin at quarterback, but it's a good quarterback class. So you can move your third quarterback and you can just replace it with a second round pick or a first round pick, where you're not really losing a ton of value, but you're getting more value back from the good class that's coming up, right? So that's a little bit more of a deeper one, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I really like that. I think just being aware of your league too, and just knowing what people have and what they're willing to trade. Like, you may have people that are a little bit easier to trade with, and you could capitalize on that. I don't want to say take advantage of, because I don't think that's necessarily fair. But if you could you know try to try to negotiate something, and you know uh, be able to capitalize on a weaker draft class, and maybe go get a veteran running back with a second round pick or something like that. Trade that. So, or just try to stockpile, and like what you said, like try to stockpile these seconds, and you could take a couple of these running backs, and not just put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So, just make sure you're aware. And that's where, again, we're going to be coming up with a lot more Dynasty content. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and you'll be able to follow all of our videos for that. But we're going to be talking about these rookies a lot. And again, you'll be able to, if you trust our evaluations, and, we've got a lot of views the last couple of weeks. So you guys are definitely interested in the content. If you trust our evaluations, which I hope you guys do, and we look at things from a little bit outside of the box, right? We don't just follow that narrative. I try to tune the narratives out as much as possible every single offseason. And it's easier for me because I'm not addicted to Twitter. I'll just turn it off.
Right.
I don't need
Right.
social media, but it's easier for me to not get wrapped up in it.
And part of it though is when you're in a dynasty league, it's a lot different than redraft, because you're more it's a year round commitment. And
Right.
I think that's the thing, is just that's a bonus tip, is trying to stay committed year round, and uh kind of keeping your ear to the ground a little bit, and trying to pick up on subtle things, whether it's waivers you can pick up on, like trades, free agency, kind of
Hmm.
stuff like that. And
Yep.
just be aware all year round so that you can take advantage of some of this because unfortunately, more often than not, we see that managers really aren't as connected year round.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
So
All right. What's your third tip here for the?
yeah, so my last one, it's a pretty easy one actually. And it's something people can fall into is entrusting the good old trade calculator that you can find on like Keep Trade Cut.
Mm,
Those can be really good tools for beginners.
yep.
Uh, to kind of gauge the values on players. I use it too. And it's the same with Calvin, just to kind of get a glimpse of like
A
what might these
baseline.
players be
Yeah.
worth.
Yep.
And stuff like that. It's to kind of build a trade into, at least, if you want to tell your manager, if you want to tell somebody, hey, like I checked it on a trade calculator and it looked pretty good, but
Yep.
unfortunately there's some people that like I've been I've talked with in trades where they live and die by the trade calculator.
Hmm.
And if it doesn't work out in their favor and they're not the one, quote unquote winning the trade, then they aren't going to do it.
Yep.
And that can be really discouraging for other managers.
Yeah. And I will say, trade calculators, people like to rail on them, and I get it. They're
Yeah.
bad. They're bad. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. Don't hear what I'm not saying here. But I like them to exploit them, right?
Sure.
Like,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
not
Absolutely.
every trade, if you have someone like you're talking about where they're die in the wool, you have
Yep.
to use a trade calculator. Well, find players that are high valued or
Yep.
undervalued on the trade calculator and just go trade for them. You're like, oh yeah, you really like,
So and
Javonte
so.
Williams is RB 18. He's about the same as let's see, who's the wide receiver 18 right now. Nico Collins. So I'll give you Nico Collins for Javonte Williams, and we'll see how that goes. That's just a rough example, but if it's very easy to find mismatches in a trade calculator and exploit that for your benefit. So, yeah, I don't use it. Don't trust it in terms
Yeah.
of how it ranks people. That does not mean that Justin Jefferson, like CeeDee Lamb, is the number 2 wide receiver right now on trade calculator, and
Yep.
Jamar Chase is still the better receiver. Like,
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
get the
and
argument, but Jamar Chase is better.
yeah. Yeah. And it's I feel trade calculators are just another tool you can use to to try to better your team,
Right.
so it's something to use but not to live by.
Yes. And like, for example, Justin Jefferson is based on this, like a late first round pick better than Jamar Chase. Like, Justin Jefferson's been banged up. Like, Justin Jefferson hasn't played in what, 4 or 5 weeks now, 6 weeks?
It's been like 6 or 7, Calvin, because
Yeah.
I have them in a league. So
There you go. Like, at least Jamar Chase is putting up points. And I think Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver. I think you can make the argument that Jamar Chase is the Dynasty 101, but for
that's
wide
fair. Yeah.
receivers, not
Yep.
not for
Yep.
everything else. But it's just crazy to me how calculators they can skew this stuff so much. But that's a perfect example. If you have Justin Jefferson, right, and you want Jamar Chase, you can go offer Justin Jefferson for Jamar Chase and a first and show them a trade calculator, and it'll say, "Oh, that's a fair trade." It's like, okay, I will happily take that 100% of the time. So, use it to your advantage, but don't trust it, I guess.
Yep.
All right, my last tip here, and then we'll get out of here for you guys. And if you ever have any questions before we wrap this up, if you ever have any questions, this is all pretty basic stuff. You've probably heard a lot of it before,
Yeah.
but we're trying to give you a little bit more in-depth examples and insight into it because people can talk about it really quickly, easily, and you just they never really get into the weeds because a lot of people don't think about it in the weeds as much, right? Where they have examples of this stuff, or it's just, that sounds good, so we're going to say it, but we're not really going to think it through too much. But one example is take a stab at upcoming free agents in the offseason, right? And this is a very, this is your time frame for that. If you're not like a playoff team, and you have no trade deadline, or if you do have a trade deadline, after week 17, make sure you're hitting the ground running on these guys, because you don't have a ton of time, because you only have from February to mid-March, where there's the close down window of the NFL, right? The resetting period where not free agency hasn't started, the new league year hasn't started, but this is where you can get a ton of value. And this is where I do most of my work, is this little window. You go and you target the guys that are going to be free agents, or you think have the potential to get traded, and you go, you snag them. And if, for example, T. Higgins, we talked about him a little bit already. T. Higgins is currently the wide receiver 22, which is hilarious because this time last year, he was the wide receiver 7. So, it varies so wildly on this, but T. Higgins is going to be a free agent after this year. If T. Higgins goes to New York and is the Giants' number 1 wide receiver, where's he going to be on this chart? He's going to be top 10, top 12. Right?
Yeah.
You can buy him now for wide receiver 22, and as soon as he signs with the Giants or whoever it is, even if he re-signs with the Bengals, people are going to be excited. Oh, he's back. Yeah, he's back with Burrow. Like, he's going to jump because he's a free agent and he's going to sign somewhere. There's other guys that are out there. Calvin Ridley technically is a free agent this upcoming year. Jerry Jeudy is another guy. You can take a stab on some of these guys that you think are lower down the rankings that could take a massive jump up. Gabe Davis, for example. Everyone loves to clown on Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis has been fine this year. Like, he has been completely fine. He's a free agent. It's entirely possible that he doesn't go back to Buffalo. Let's say he goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. It's entirely possible he goes to the Chiefs, right? Gabe Davis goes to the Chiefs and is all of a sudden the Chiefs' number 1 weapon. Where's he going to be in a ranking? He's going to be top 10 again, So my third piece of advice, you gotta, what is it, the saying, right? Scared money don't make no money, right? You gotta be willing to
take chances.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to say it. You gotta be able to take some chances. Some of them blow up in your face, right? I invested in Allen Robinson when he went over to the Rams. I thought, he's with Matt Stafford. This is going to be great. And, it was for like a 2nd-round pick. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. And it's been terrible. It basically was the end of his career. He's never been viable since, right? Yep. And they don't always work out. But at the same time, you can get some mega, mega value from some of these guys. And I think that it's worth the risk to go and get these guys that are on the last year of their deal. Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is injured and he's a free agent. Let's say he goes back to Minnesota. All of a sudden he's going to be back up there. It's going to be a long road for him, but when he gets back to playing, he's going to be just fine for fantasy football, and you're going to get him for nothing right now. In a Superflex league, like, you can get him a potential quarterback 2 for nothing.
Dirt cheap, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So go get these free agents, invest in them, look at this upcoming class, who's going to be a free agent, find the guys that you like that are a little bit cheaper that you think can make that big jump up. And we'll talk about a lot of these guys as free agency kind of rolls around. But, man, that's the easiest place for me. That's where I find all the value. So much value.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and that kind of goes back to what I said earlier, just kind of being being active all year round.
Right.
It can be exhausting. It can be a lot, but we play fantasy football for fun.
Right.
Yep. And it's something that, if you're listening to this podcast, that you probably enjoy yourself. So,
yeah,
I would encourage you to at least, it doesn't have to be every day, it can, in the off season, but, just being aware, just kind of keeping track of the news, whether it's on Twitter or whether it's on another like, Slack or Discord channel or whatever, wherever you get that stuff, just kind of being aware of it, and then trying to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and here's a bonus tip for you guys. Last one really quickly. This is the way that I kind of do it in my offseason, because I'm in 6 leagues, right? And what Dale's saying, being active, that's tough. I will not lie. It is impossible to be active in all 6 leagues and maintain that for an entire year long.
Yes.
What I do is I kind of take little breaks, right? Where I'll look at one league and I'll go into it for a week, right? Like a week straight. I'm going to look at all the different trading potentials. Like, I want this guy. This guy's got this guy. He needs this. I will hyper focus on one league for a week. Try and get some trades done, send some messages out, send some offers out, see if I can work any deals. At the end of that week or week and a half, however much time you want to take, you go to the next league. And then you just hyper focus on that league for a week. And then you go to the next league. And for 6 weeks, that's a 6-week rotation, right? The whole offseason is what, like, it's probably what, like 18 weeks, 20 weeks, around something like that. Like, probably, you do that 3 times and you're basically through the whole thing, right? And you're not going to get every trade you want in that first week stretch. And I just find it easier and easier to manage my rosters that way, to look at, hyper focus on it for a week, then move on to the next one, hyper focus on it for a week. Then you come back in a month and you say, hey, we were kind of talking through this. Have you changed your mind at this guy at all? Sometimes you can get some of these guys. Oh, T. Higgins, he didn't sign with the Bengals. He signed with the Ravens, and he's behind. There's Mark Andrews and there's Zay Flowers. Is T. Higgins? Did you kind of soften on him a little bit here? And you can work some of the details that way. So just think of it that way and take it in bits and pieces. But yeah, that's the way I like to do it. Let me know your thoughts down below. Dale, any last thoughts here before we get out of here?
Nope. Just send it home.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening tonight. We appreciate it, especially all the new listeners out there. The last couple of videos have been crazy, and truly we appreciate you guys for all that, especially going into Christmas. It's been a wild ride, but no, we appreciate you guys out there listening to us, and we're excited. Like I said, we're going to be dropping a lot more Dynasty content as we start to ramp up into the off season or the playoffs. That's where a lot of our Dynasty content really starts to ramp up. So if there's any content that you want to hear specifically, we're open to suggestions. We're not saying that our ideas are any better than yours. We are willing to listen. And if you guys have any suggestions, let us know. We'd be happy to schedule a video around it. We're going to be continuing to pump out the content. I think this is around a video 160 on the year. So we have a lot of videos, and we're going to be doing it again next year. Next season's going to be the same thing. We love it. We love talking about it. Me and Dale like talking about this stuff with you guys and helping you guys win your leagues. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Follow the channel on YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple, again, Rumble, anywhere that podcasts are found. Dynasty After Dark podcast. And yeah, we appreciate you guys. You can find us one more time on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, at Dynasty_Dale, and at FF After Dark. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you guys again for listening. And until next time, have a good night.
And we all got dreams, we all want things, but what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?